In today's video, we're going to talk about the difference between systems, processes, protocols, and manual tasks. And why this is super important to the e-com space is because once you build strong protocols that operate on its own autonomously, you take away so much mental bandwidth and time that you actually have to sit there and think about certain components. So in this video, we're going to break it all down. I'm going to show you some of the protocols that I have for my e-commerce business that's doing over 6 figures a month now in sales. And I'm going to help you figure out and build those systems that then turn into protocols. So let's get straight into it. So you got manual tasks, right? This is what you're doing once or twice. Honestly, anytime you're doing something that's 3 or 4 times over and over, and it's quite time consuming to do. Say you've got a task that takes 15 minutes and you're doing it 2 to 3 times. That's where you build a system, because systems essentially repeat. They go over and over, and protocols fit inside systems. But this is where people go wrong. They try to build these convoluted systems that break because there's so many points inside it. Whereas if you focus heavily on protocols, then you can build systems that are reliable and basically on autopilot. So, as I said, if you're doing a task that's time consuming and it takes like 5 to 15 minutes, and you're doing it 2 to 3 times, that's when you want to build a process. And in previous videos, we've talked about how I approach thinking about processes and systems, okay? And the ideal situation is you're basically building out systems and processes that you know will repeat in the future, but you don't have to essentially think about it. And as I said, people try to build these convoluted systems and processes instead of focusing on protocols. Now, what is the difference? Protocols is essentially a strict, refined, step-by-step process. Systems are inclusive of protocols. So protocols go into systems. Say you've got a system here. These are all the different protocols that come into play. Now, a lot of people just try to build the system instead of refining these protocols here. So when I talk about protocols in the e-com space, there's a whole wide variety of them that you can implement so you don't actually have to do certain things over and over and over again. And in previous videos, I've explained, like, when I was in the agency space, every time something went wrong, that's when we'd stop and we'd build a system or a protocol. We'd document it. And that's one of the key components when you're building protocols, is actually documenting it. Because if you're not documenting it fully, then you basically are just running a system that's not automatic and it's stuck in your head. So the key step is documenting. And now when I say documenting, I mean documenting with fail safes in mind, because if something's going to break, it will break. And when you're scaling and putting these systems and protocols in place, you can't scale reliably and consistently if things keep breaking. So the whole idea is having systems that are documented so they don't break along the way. And there's heaps of different ways to document it. But if you can document it properly in the manual tasks section, right? You document it fully. Now, when I say document, I literally mean you do 1, 2, 3. You write out the system and process. Now, a lot of the time I've talked to some friends about this and they say, oh, I don't need it yet, bro, for example. They're not at that point. However, if you have the fundamentals right at the start, then it's a lot easier in the future. And it also allows, when you're documenting it, writing it down like this, you can see, oh, step 2, it's messy. I can improve this. So the whole idea about documenting it is to first sanity check it all, and then secondly, to actually understand where you could improve this process. And the whole idea with documenting it is setting it up so that you can give it to a virtual assistant, a customer service person, a team member. The whole idea is basically having a fully documented process that you can just give straight to them. There's no breaking points because you've thought of every single part that could go wrong, and then they can basically start off the get-go, ready to go. For example, my customer service handbook is like 15 to 20 pages. It covers everything from cancellation flow, refund flow, what to do if there's a damaged item, who to talk to, all of it, so that I can bring on a new customer service person off the get-go and they don't have to think or ask questions. They can literally go straight into it, and that alleviates so much stress, time, energy from me, and mental bandwidth. Because when you're a solo operator in the e-com space or any digital space, your mental bandwidth is the most important. You should always be prioritizing your highest and best use of time. Me personally, with my skill set and knowledge, sitting here replying to customer emails is not my best use of time. It's important, but I can bring someone in to do it instead of me having to do it. And they can't do that if it's all in my brain. So, as I said, the first step is to documenting all of it. And that's probably the most important part. And you need to document in a simple way that you can give it to someone who doesn't fully understand it like you do, and they can pick it up. So once you've got it documented, then you can start building the protocols and systems that come into play. Now, these, as I said, these are very different. Most people try to build a system that's cohesive and circular, right? That's your end goal at the end of the day. It's possible, but it has a lot more breaking points. As I said, when it comes to documenting it as well, you want to minimize the amount of breaking points. So in my ecom business, I've got a heap of different protocols. We have customer service protocol, which runs on the handbook that I made, which is basically fully documented. Then inside the customer service, we have handbook protocol. Then we have refund protocol. And as I said, protocols sit inside a system. So we have all of these different ones. Resolution, okay? Resolution, so if there's an issue with a product or a customer, once it's solved, they start the resolution protocol. Now all of this feeds into my Slack system. These two are based on forms, okay? And at the very start, you don't need to go this heavy, but I promise you, you will thank yourself in the future if you do put the time into building proper customer service handbooks. Because as you scale, you're going to have a lot of customer emails. Not good, not bad, it's just part of the job, essentially. So then we have product sourcing. Again, it's its own protocol. Then we have content for products. Then we have image content for products. So all of these protocols are refined and they sit inside a linear process. So for example, if I was to break down the customer service linear process, they get an email, customer service team gets an email from the customer, then they read the handbook for basically what to do. The handbook basically never changes, and I've built it out so it's super simple. So it has literally diagrams on flow charts on what to do, when to do it. That's a little bit complicated, but in the future, it's worth doing at the start. Not that important. So they read the handbook, right? They solve the problem with the customer. Then they say the customer needs a refund. They fill out the refund form. Then they fill out the resolution form. Then every single Friday, we have a sync meeting where they basically recap everything that happened through the week. Because the whole idea about building these automatic systems is I don't have to think about it. So if I read the emails every single day, that's taking up so much mental bandwidth that I could be focusing on other things. So this sync recap basically is a simple 1 or 2 message conversation that we have. There's a template that I've got. They fill it out, I ask any questions, and we move ahead. I don't have to think about this entire system because I put in these protocols in place. It's self-sufficient. My customer service team is great. They handle all the questions. If there's any concerns, they put them into a document. We talk about it on Friday. And the whole idea about having this recap in the weekly sync is because if I'm getting like 10 messages a day, right? That's 70 a week. Every single time a new message comes through, I need to stop what I'm doing, and then I need to sit there and think about it, research it, or whatever the problem is, right? That is a whole lot of wasted time. That's why I focus so much on building these protocols so I'm not wasting my own time. So instead of dealing with 70 messages every single week, we just talk about it in the sync recap. Because I have the handbook protocol, all of these that I spent time actually implementing, the customer service team can run autonomously. They can work within themselves. They don't need me because I have every single thing broken down in the handbook protocol where they don't ask questions. They know exactly what they need to do and when because of these visual diagrams. It allows them to do their job fully autonomously. I don't need to think about customer service. Obviously, there are issues that pop up sometimes that are critical and they need my thinking and my decision making. But at the end of the day, these protocols, which took me an hour or two to make, maybe 3 hours with the handbook, alleviates so much time. I can guarantee you 70 conversations about orders and products is definitely a lot more time than 3 hours a week. So sitting down and spending the time to actually build out these handbooks and protocols is super important because it's so much mental bandwidth that you alleviate, but also it allows things to flow without you involved. And as an e-commerce operator, agency operator, whatever it is that you're working on, the whole idea is to be working on the business, not in the business. If I'm sitting there thinking about these 70 messages or 70 conversations a week about orders and products, that's me working inside the business. I need to be working on it. So having all these protocols that we have set up to make things run seamlessly allows me to actually focus on what I'm good at. And that is my highest and best use of time, strategy, making money, building in resources, setting up programs, protocols, all of that. It's to some degree a never ending cycle. But as I said, it's worth the 3 hours of work putting in now for the customer handbook, for example, than me spending 3 hours every single week talking about all of these questions and issues. And obviously you can't get it perfect. It's always going to need to be flexible, because if you have a rigid system and rigid protocols that don't allow for flexibility, they will break often, and they will spend a lot of time trying to fix. And a lot of our systems and processes, having AI and everything is great. And I fell into a trap a few years ago when I was doing the agency stuff. And I was trying to automate the entire process. And you can't rely on automation when there's multiple variables in play. You just can't. So a lot of our systems don't actually run autonomously using AI or systems or Zapier or any of that. It's all manual with a little bit of technology on top. So the forms allow my team to be more efficient so they don't have to copy and paste the same template over and over and over. So any step of the way that you can improve a system or process for a little bit of energy, it's worth it. For example, if I didn't implement those forms for resolutions and refunds, it would mean that my team have to copy and paste the same template every single time, try and fill it out, move around the cursor and the keyboard, make mistakes, all of that. Implementing a 5-10 minute form that it took me to set up alleviates so many issues in the future through manual error. It's simple. They answer the question, it's got drop downs, done. It allows them to be more efficient, which makes me more efficient. That's really important when you're running a team, because if your efficiency is tied directly to your income, the more efficient you are, the more money you make. And as I said, as a solo operator, there's a lot of things to think about when you're launching your store and manage it and growing it and scaling it. That's why all of these systems and protocols to actually scale are super important, because if you scale without having strong foundational systems and protocols, then everything's going to break. You might scale to 6 figures, but you're going to be holding on the whole time, hoping nothing breaks. Whereas if you have these foundations and you put the effort and time in at the start, then it allows you to grow so much faster and not have to worry about a system breaking. As I said, systems do break. That's the whole idea. It's kind of good when they break, because then you can go and iterate and improve. But at the end of the day, you want to alleviate and eliminate as much mental bandwidth as possible. Your highest and best use is not doing these day-to-day things that you're doing every single day. Put a system in place, grab a resource, grab an offshore worker, a virtual assistant, customer service person, whoever, and then give them the system process that you don't have to focus on it. So the key takeaway from this video is that systems, as much as we want them to be circular, they are not. They are linear. And without the right protocols, it will crack and break. Whereas having the right linear protocols in a system allow, if there's breakage here, you can fix it. If there's breakage here, you can fix it. If there's no breakage, it can literally run autonomously without you involved, which is the goal of running a business at the end of the day, and making money too. Because money solves a lot of issues, especially around mental bandwidth. because, as I said, your highest and best use is not doing all these systems. And as I said, your best use is not working in the business, it's working on the business, working on the brand, working on the store, not in the store. So if you have any questions at all, leave a comment, like and subscribe, and I'll get back to these questions, because I enjoy teaching people how systems can improve their work-life balance, their profit, their bottom line, all of that, because they do. It's as simple as that. So thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.